All right, awesome. Now I will introduce Patty Graves. She's been with Pro Musica Arizona since 2015, first as an assistant conductor and conductor of the Women in Song Vocals Ensemble, now as the newly appointed artistic director and principal conductor. So let's welcome Patty Graves. Thank you for being here tonight, Patty.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody. It's really fun to be here and to bring a little bit of insight into the world I live in. I wanted to just say a couple things just about what I kind of would love tonight to be. I would love for you all to be brave and ask questions and not save them to the end. I would really love for this to be an interactive evening, especially since it's a small group. So I would love to answer all of your burning questions about what you want to know about what a conductor does. I'm of course going to tell you a little bit about what I do. But I would love to hear from you. And so we're going to use, you have the reactions to like raise your hand, to raise the hand, all of that. If you want to do that, I'd love to hear from you as to are any of you musicians? Do you play a musical instrument or do you sing? Does anybody have any kind of musical background in their lives? Okay, awesome. That's cool. So unmute yourself and tell me about your musical skills.
So I used to sing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was in a choir growing up. And I played in a band for a little while, and so yeah.
So you kind of know firsthand what a conductor does, at least standing
a little bit. Yeah, I was a kid back then, so I probably wasn't paying as much of attention as I should have.
Sure. Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in? Melinda. Wait, you're muted still. Hold on. Moment. Push your space bar.
Okay. Actually, many years ago, I do have a degree in music.
Wonderful.
In voice. And for many, many years, I've always been active in the performing arts, mostly in musical theater. And so, but now I've still, though I don't perform now, I'm still, the arts are a major part of my life. And for the past 6 years, I was on the Goodyear Arts and Culture Commission.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah. Anybody else? No. Okay. All right. So a lot of people, we all know what a conductor, that the conductor stands on the podium and they have their baton and they wave it. And what I wanted to really talk to you tonight is just sort of my life journey to become a conductor, and then to really talk about some of the nuts and bolts about kind of day-to-day life as a conductor and what that looks like. So I started piano lessons when I was 7, though my dream was to be a singer, and I wanted to be the next Julie Andrews. And I had that dream since I was 4. So that is something that I just was determined that I was going to be a singer. And no one in their right mind should teach a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old to sing. That's something that or to have voice lessons, as I should say. So I had piano lessons, and I am so grateful that my parents made me stick it out all the way through high school with piano lessons, because I needed those musician skills. But singing was my passion, and I started singing in a children's choir, and then choir at school and junior high. What became very important to me. My piano skills were good enough that I actually became the accompanist for the junior high choir when I was in junior high. So as a 6th and 7th grader, I played well enough to be able to accompany my high school choir, my junior high choir, and then got into high school. Singing was still my passion, but those piano skills I found were valued. And so I was also the accompanist for my high school choir. And then I did get to start voice lessons when I was in high school, and went on to college and did major in voice performance. When you get a music degree, you not only study whatever your primary instrument is, mine was voice. So I had studied voice, studied piano, and then I also studied classical pipe organ, and was in the very famous Concordia Choir. I went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. And as part of the music degree, we all had to take a conducting class. We had to study conducting. No matter what your career plans were, that was part of it. And I had always loved the idea of being a conductor, and found that I had all the right skills to be able to do that. And so when I was a sophomore in college, I actually got my very first church choir conducting job. And that was really the first time that I was really in the trenches. And even though I was very young in as far as college goes, and my music education was very good, and I had a lot of good music theory skills, which are very necessary. I was a very good music reader, which as a conductor is absolutely essential. You have to really be a fine music reader in order to analyze scores and things like that. I'm going to show you some scores in a little while. But getting that first choral job then was the beginning of my education as to what it meant to be a conductor. So it's so much more than just standing up there and waving your arms, because you're responsible for choosing all the music that's going to be performed. You are responsible then for rehearsing and teaching the music to singers in particular. Not all singers are notoriously, sadly, not great music readers. And so they have to be taught the vocal parts a lot of times by rote, which means that they have to either hear it played or hear it sung to be able to sing it back. Instrumentalists are a whole nother bag of fruit there. And so instrumentalists are good music readers generally. And so the very different worlds between band and orchestra and choir. So because I was a voice major, choir was my obvious go-to. And I loved teaching vocal technique as part of my choir rehearsals. In a choir situation where there's typically 4 voices, and they're called soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Soprano is the highest voice, female. Alto is the lower of the female voices. Then you have tenors, which is the high male voice, and you have basses, which are the low male voice. And all of those voices sing a different part. And so as a choral director, I have to learn everybody's part. I have to be able to know how their part sounds in order for me to know whether or not they're singing it correctly. I often have to sing it for them so that they can sing it back and make sure that they're singing it well. When all 4 parts are being sung together, I have to know all the parts so well that I can hear if someone is singing, if a part is singing a wrong note, or if there's a wrong rhythm, or any other thing that might not be working the way it's supposed to be. And so it's highly involved, and multitasking is the name of the game. You have to be a really excellent multitasker. In a choral situation with choirs, not only do you have all those voices to worry about, but you also usually have a pianist, an accompanist. And so your job is to make sure that all of those components all happen together at the same time when they're supposed to happen. The other thing about on the vocal side of things is that we don't just sing in English. We sing in lots of different languages. So a lot of choral music is written in Latin, French, German, a lot of choral music in German, as well as English. And then there's ethnic music, which is written in all kinds of languages. So you really, really have to be an expert in languages and understanding the pronunciations, because you have to teach those pronunciations to your singers. And singing in a foreign language is very different from actually speaking a foreign language, because in singing you have to form the sounds. And so there's a lot of things that have to happen in order for a foreign language to be sung well, so that it's understood by people who know those languages natively. So on the choral side of things, that's kind of in a nutshell what happens. I mentioned that there are the four main voices, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. But within a choir, those parts often divide. And so the basses will be divided into two separate parts, and the tenors into two separate parts, and altos. So you can easily have 8 different notes, voices, all going at the same time, and sometimes even more. I have sung literature that had 4-part divisi just in the soprano section alone. So the soprano, 20 sopranos divided into 4 different parts is 5 on a part, if you have a choir that large. So it becomes very, very complex in all the different combinations that can happen. So on the choral side of things, that's kind of in a nutshell. The orchestral side of things is a whole different ball of wax. So in an orchestra, there are many, many different instruments. I'm sure you all know this. So we have our string section, which consists of violins, which are divided into first and second violins. We have violas, which is a smaller version of the violin. It's a deeper tone and actually is played it's pitched differently. We have the cello, which is a small sized double bass, or a very large oversized violin. And then there is the contrabass, or the double bass, the string bass that we see, standing up and sawing with the big bow. That's just the string section alone. And then you have the woodwinds section, the woodwinds. So woodwinds are your flute, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, English horn. And within each of those sections, they are often divided into 2 and sometimes even 3 parts. And then you have, you have your piccolo as well as your flutes. So the piccolo is, a little small, tiny version of a flute. And so those are your woodwinds. Within the clarinet family alone, so it's very complicated, but all these instruments, not all these instruments play in what we call the same key. So string instruments generally are what we call C instruments. Flutes and piccolos and oboes and bassoons are what we call a C instrument. But a clarinet and a trumpet are typically B-flat instruments. And what that means is that when they play their B-flat on their instrument, it sounds the note C. So they are reading in a completely different key from those C instruments in the orchestra. And then you have the French horns, which are yet in a whole different key. And so you can have any number of things going on. So when you're reading a conductor orchestral score, and I'm going to show one to you in a moment, you'll see, that's a C score, I just realized. The example I was planning to show you is what they call a score in the key of C, where all the instruments are scored in the same key when they should be scored in different. So I'll try to hold something up for you to see. Oh, wait, no, they're not. Oh, the horns are in the right key. All right. Anyway, I probably lost some of you, but all of this to say that it's very complex. So when I am preparing an orchestral score, I sit at my piano and I play every instrument's part. And then, so if the trumpet part is they play in B flat, but it sounds like it's C, I have to mentally transpose their notes so that I can play it in the same key as all the other C instruments, because we think in C, as it were. So Melinda, did you have a question? I wasn't sure if that was a hand up. Okay, all right. So within the orchestra, we've got our strings, we have our woodwinds, and then we have our brass instruments. And our brass instruments are trumpets, trombones, French horns, and various other iterations of those. Oh, you know what I forgot? Sometimes in orchestra, we also have saxophones. They're more common in band than they are in orchestra, but there's certainly plenty of orchestral pieces. We play a lot of pop music like Irving Berlin and Rodgers and Hammerstein and all of those, and a lot of those are scored for saxophone as well. So that's all part of the woodwind section, and they all play in different keys. So you'll hear terms like alto saxophone and tenor saxophone and baritone saxophone. And what that means is that they're different sized instruments, but not only are they different sized instruments, but they play in different keys. And the reason they play in those different keys is because their instruments sound better in the keys that they're actually pitched in. So it all sounds right, but they're playing completely different notes. So an E flat saxophone, that means that when they play E flat, it sounds like a C. And a B, and then you have, so so anyway, you're following as far as the complication of this all goes, and the level of musical experience and musical skill that you have to have in order to really be able to do this well. So then we move into the percussion section. And so within the percussion section, we always think of that as, you know, drums and timpani, but there's chimes and there's bells and there's triangles and there's tambourines and there's shakers, there's maracas, I mean, the list of percussion instruments just goes on and on. There's the big gong, all of those things. There's xylophone, there's marimba, there's vibes. All of these different instruments all come together. And it is my responsibility as the conductor, I have to know what every one of those instruments is supposed to be playing. And that's just, and then we get into rehearsal. And again, if wrong notes are played, I have to be able to hear that. I spend just huge amounts of time poring over the scores, marking the scores, so that I don't miss. I have to make sure that I'm cueing everyone when we're all together. So even though they're music readers, they do rely on a visual cue, a physical visual cue from the conductor, usually to bring them in. And so if they keep missing an entrance for whatever reason, then I know that actually I'm not doing my job very well, because they need a cue and I'm not giving that. So I have to mark my score and make sure that I am appropriately getting them the information that they need visually from me. So that's kind of in a nutshell what that looks like. So I'm going to I'm going to show you this orchestral score. So this is called Irving Berlin's America. This is a medley of Irving Berlin's tunes. And this is one of 2 conductor scores. And I say that because this particular medley is for choir, band, and optional strings. And so the string score is in a completely different book. So when I'm rehearsing, I've got the string score and the band score side by side, trying to read both things at the same time, which is a nightmare. But every orchestral score is laid out the same. And I'm going to hold this. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but I'm going to try. So at the very top, it says flute piccolo, and their line goes all the way across this way. And below them is the oboe. The next one down is oboe. And below that in this score is a bassoon. And those are the top woodwind instruments. Then underneath them are all the clarinets, and every score is, I'd like to say that every score is laid out the same, but not always. But this is generally what happens. The flute, oboe, and bassoon. Then the clarinets are the next 4 lines. And in this score, there are 3, there's clarinet 1 and clarinet 2 and 3, and E flat alto clarinet, and B flat bass clarinet. All of those things right there in the clarinet section. And then we have all 3 saxophones, 1, 2, and 3. And then we have the vocal parts are right in the middle, right? And these 2 lines right here are the vocal parts. So that's when the singers are going to sing. That's where their part is, buried in the middle of the score. And underneath that then are all the brass instruments. So we have trumpet 1 and trumpet 2 and 3. And then we have French horn 1 and 2, followed by French horn 3 and 4. And then we have trombone 1 and 2. And then we have baritone horn, which is another kind of orchestral horn. Then we have the tuba. And then below that are the percussion parts. And then in a full orchestral score, the strings would be below that. So there would be 4 more lines of instruments down here. So when we're reading this, we are not only reading all of this up and down, but then the music goes across the page. So even though there is a ton of music on this page, there is only 5 measures of music on this page. And what that means is that this piece is there's 2 beats in a measure. So there's only 10 beats of music on this page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Turn the page. And then there's 10 more measures. All right, so that's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely I think all of us who are conductors, we have a certain level of insanity and self-flagellation. We torture sometimes it feels like torture, but it's so much fun when it all comes together. It's pretty amazing and wonderful. So we have to keep all of this straight in our minds as we go. Now, a choral score, choir music, is much, much easier. So choir music is little. Isn't this great? This is a typical size piece of choral music. And this particular piece is only, well, it's in 4 parts mostly, okay? If I hold it up here, so the soprano line is the top line. This is the alto line. This is the tenor line. This is the bass line. And these 2 lines down here for the piano. So there's, and so there's 4 measures of music up here, and then there's 4 measures of music down here. So there's a lot more music on a page in choral music, which makes it a lot easier to read. But within this, in this piece, at the top of this page, the sopranos and altos each have 2 notes that they're singing. So soprano 1 and 2 and alto 1 and 2, but the basses and the tenors are singing in unison. And you can see that, that the sopranos and altos don't have words. They have oohs, but the basses and tenors below have words. So again, lots of different things going on, different parts moving at different times. And so we have to keep all of that straight. So one of the things that I thought might be fun for tonight, so before COVID hit, we were preparing a large work. And so what that means is that it was one big piece of music that lasted for almost an hour. It was in multiple movements. And this piece is by a living composer who lives in California. His name is Joseph Julian Gonzalez. And he wrote a mass, so like a church mass, a musical church mass, set in 8 different movements. Normally, when we sing masses, they're in Latin, but he's of Hispanic descent and had done a lot of research in the Aztec people, on the Aztec people and Aztec instruments. And he wrote this mass for choir, orchestra, and Aztec percussion instruments, and it has a very much a mariachi sort of a feel to it. So the challenge of this piece was we had to acquire the native Aztec percussion instruments that were required for this. Oh, I should pull up those pictures. Take me forever to find them. Didn't think of that. So there's a very large, tall drum. It kind of looks like a conga drum that this piece uses, and it's called a huehuet. And then it uses some very special seed shakers. So seed pods that are all woven together with thread, and they make a very specific noise. And so I had to find out what they were. I'd never heard of them before. They're called chachayotes. And so I had to go find out what chachayotes were and how to find them. I found some on eBay. The big native Aztec drum, I was looking for one of those, and it was just the craziest thing. But right before Christmas, I was on OfferUp, and in the middle of the screen of OfferUp was a picture of this drum. And it was the crazy, and I looked at it and I went, oh my goodness, that's the drum I need. How is this even possible? And so I sent the lady a text, and I'm like, I'm really interested in this drum. How much do you want for it? Now, I'd been online and looking at new ones that were like $600. And she's like, oh, just $60. My husband made this one and it's really wonderful, but we don't use it anymore. And so we used to do all the we were part of a native Aztec dance troupe, and he played this drum, and we're not doing that anymore. And so we're getting rid of this drum. And she lived just right off of I-17 and Baseline and like 16th Street. And so I was like, I'm coming, I will be there very soon. And was able to get this drum, which I will try to find a quick photo for you of it. I took some pictures and I just have to go back because it's back a ways. Let me see if I can find it. December of, wait. Hold on, I'm looking for it. I'd probably find it faster if I just Googled it. I should have thought of this sooner. Hold on. Does anyone have any questions thus far that I can answer while we're paused for me to find a photo for you? No. Almost there. Ah, here it is. All right, now I'm going to share my screen, I hope. Where's that button? There it is. Can you see this? This is the drum. I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, it's about probably 3.5 feet high and probably about 18 inches in diameter. And it is carved from out of a tree trunk. So the tree trunk was hollowed out. And then the little design at the bottom here was then cut out, obviously. And this is a real deer hide that's been stretched over the top of it. So it's the real deal. It was crazy. So anyway, that's just a little insight into part of my life as a conductor is finding these crazy instruments. Now for the fun part. So I thought we would look at just the first few measures of the score of the first movement of this, and then I'm going to play the music that goes with it, and we're going to I'm going to try to help you follow it. So if you look over here where I'm at, this is the orchestral score, and so we've got our woodwinds are here at the top, our horns and our brass are here in the middle. This is timpani, our percussion is here. The voices are here in the middle. This is harp. Oh yes, harp in the orchestra. This is piano and classical guitar, and below it are the strings. So that's what everything that I have to look at as I'm following these scores. So I'm going to play a recording of this, and I only have the first 4 pages up here for you. We won't listen to a lot of it, but I thought it would be interesting for you to try to figure out what in the world is going on. And then the other thing I thought I might do is I might conduct along with it. So, but right now we're just gonna, we'll do that separately. So here we go. I'm gonna play the beginning of this. It starts with a percussion. So the first thing you're gonna be following is this percussion line right here. And the thing that comes in next is the piano, followed by the horns here. And the strings in the piano come in at the same time. This is piano, this is strings, this is horns, and then the bassoon comes in here, and then we go to the next page. All right, here we go. All right. That's a pretty exciting piece of music, isn't it? So we are going to, so what I had started to say is that before COVID hit, we were 2 weeks away from performing this piece back in March of last year. And so obviously we've all been on pause. And so we are planning to perform this piece on April 2nd and 3rd of 2022 on our next season. So we're very excited about that. But I don't know if you were able to follow my little arrow along. I was trying to, you know, take you through the score and show you the vocal parts because they're the easiest to follow if you can follow anything. But it's a wonderfully exciting piece of music. So from the conductor's side of things, so going back now, that was the easy part, you know, listening to it. So the first thing as a conductor I have to make sure is that I understand the rhythm of the percussion at the beginning, which goes ba 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 yuppa ba 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 yuppa ba 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 yuppa ba 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 ba. Now, what's interesting about this piece, so there are established what we call beat patterns. So I'm going to show you some of these beat patterns so you know what they are. So music is divided into something called measures, and that there are the same, they're supposed to be the same number of beats in every measure. But in a piece like this, there were not the same number of beats in every measure. Some measures felt like there were 2 very big beats followed by 3 small beats, 3 smaller beats. And that's exactly what happens in this piece. So the beat pattern for, if there's 4 beats in a measure, which is called common time, goes like this. You go down, you go across to the left, out to the right, and up. So the last beat in every measure is always up, no matter what. Okay, so we go 1, and we make a little circle. I'm going to stand up. I'm sitting on a chair, so I'm going to stand up now and move out of the way. So this is where, if you wanted to learn to conduct some patterns, this is what you would do. Now, normally I'm going to turn this way so you can see that I'm conducting with my right hand. Okay. And so beat one goes down, one, and you make a little circle at the bottom as you go out for two, and then you make a little circle for two, and you swing back and you make a little circle for three, and then you go up. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2 is across, 3 is out, 4 is up. So if you wanted to practice that, you can do that. You can, if you don't, you can put a pencil in your hand. If you don't have a baton, a pencil works great, or you can just use your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and it's easier to see the circles when I'm doing it with my hand. You see the little circles in between each beat. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when there's only 3 beats in a measure, we basically, we take that 4-beat pattern, but we leave out beat 2. So we go 1, 2, 3, 1 out to the right, up, 1, 2, 3. So, and when we're conducting, we sometimes have to raise our arms higher or lower depending on who needs to see us. So I'm short, I'm only 5'2". And so I often have to conduct up here to be seen. That is not optimal, but it's, you know, necessity dictates often. So I will often have to conduct that pattern high, but normally you would conduct it at waist level. So the downbeat comes to your, literally at your waist. 1, and everything is on then across plane right in front of you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for 3, we go 1 out to the side and up. So 1 to the right and up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then if we only need 2 beats per measure, it's just a down, up, down, up. Now there's a little swing out at the bottom of 1. 1, 2, 1, 2. So the beat changes. The pulse of the beat is in the middle. So beat 1, beat 2, it's over here and out. Beat 3, and beat 4 actually happens as I cross my body. 4. So in 3, it's 1, 2, 3. Literally happens right here. It's not up here. The 3, this is the rest of the swing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I hope you're seeing the definition of the beat there. Now, there are many conductors. So this is the other interesting thing. So if you go on YouTube or if you go to live performances, you'll see conductors, famous, super duper famous conductors who do this. And then they'll do that again. Or they'll do big circles. And they don't use this beat pattern. Now, they can get away with that because they are with their orchestra every day of the week. And by the time they get to the podium, all they need to do is give him a tempo and they play. And he does some cues. Right. So here's the other challenge as a conductor. So the right hand is the hand that keeps the beat. That's the one that we keep the beat with, okay? The left hand is the hand that we cue with. So when we need to bring a section in, we cue with the left in the orchestra. We also do dynamics. So this is get louder, this is get softer. And we have to have complete total independence of right hand from left hand. So while my right hand is keeping the beat, 1, 2, if I want my orchestra to get louder, I'm having to, and then I want them to get softer, that my left hand is doing that. If it's time for the flutes to come in, I have to look at them, trumpets, strings. Okay, so all of that's going on. Oh, voices. Oh, where's my choir? So we're one of the few organizations in town, we may be the only organization in town, that actually has a full-time choir and orchestra. In other words, like the Phoenix Symphony has a Phoenix Symphony chorus. And the only time the Phoenix Symphony chorus rehearses is if they're doing a big choral work that needs a choir. Otherwise, they don't rehearse. So our organization, Pro Musica, we have choir rehearsal every Monday night, and we have orchestra rehearsal every Tuesday night. And most of what we do is based in the North Valley. So we perform in Sun City and Anthem. A lot of our members live up in Anthem. We have quite a few people out in Surprise and Sun City area, and that. So, but we also have people who live in Buckeye who drive all the way to our rehearsal venue at 15th Avenue and the 101. That's a big, long drive. We have people who live in Gilbert who drive into our rehearsals to either sing or play with us. So that's kind of fun. So back to Misa Azteca. So now that you kind of understand the beat pattern. So this is in 3/4 time. Da-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. And then the strings come in. Da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And then the horns come in. Da-da-dum, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, da-da-dum. And then the voices come. Kyrie, lay, Kyrie, lay. And so all of this is running through, you know, I have to be able to hear all of this music and reproduce all of this music when I'm practicing at home and not do it with a recording. I mean, the recording is great. It's great to have the recording, but it's not the same as actually having to physically think through the process of what instrument do I need to cue at this moment in time. Now this score has no markings on it because it's just a digital version of the score. My real score is in our music library at the moment. I don't have a copy of it. And I realized as I was preparing for tonight that all of my marked scores right now are in our music library up in Anthem. And so I'm so sad that I'm not able to show you my marked score. I have a system of using colored pencils for each of the woodwinds are one color, the brass are another color. And so all my scores are color coded. So I know exactly when I need to cue and where I need to look. Because when I'm doing this, as you can well imagine, the notes are flying by very, very quickly. And I'm practically memorized by the time I get to a performance, where the score is really just there as a reference more than an actual, you know, I have to follow the notes. Rehearsal is a whole different situation. I do have a short video of me conducting our orchestra at Christmas from a couple of years ago that I thought I would go ahead and play for you so you could actually see me in action. This is not with the choir, this is orchestra only. But if you're interested, I'll go ahead and screen share this little, we won't listen to the whole thing, it's like 5 minutes long. And you can, again, see that, I'm cueing. This piece was tricky for the orchestra, and so I'm a little more tied to my score than I would have liked to have been, but I just had to make sure that I didn't miss any cues. So here we go. This is from a performance of at Christmas time, 2018. Let me full screen it here. There's full screen. Yes. Nope, wrong buttons. Hold on, I'm not doing the right thing. All right, here we go. Ah, sorry. All right, anyway, so I hope that you got a little bit of a taste of a little bit of what goes on in performance. So unlike a professional symphony orchestra where they get to rehearse usually every day, we only rehearse once a week, and we generally only have about 6 rehearsals to prepare a full concert, a full 2-hour concert. That's a lot of music to be digested in a very short period of time. So I'm very dependent on having excellent musicians who a lot of these folks come in. These are mostly community members. So these are amateurs who play very well. We do, when we're missing an instrument or we need to fill out a section, we will hire professionals from the community as needed, but generally speaking, these are volunteer players, and obviously they're very good at what they do. Our community choir is, again, all volunteers. We have a number of retired music teachers that sing with us, which is very cool. But we also have a lot of folks who have very, very little musical training and find that a lot of what we do is very challenging. So with the fact that we have great technology these days, we are able to make rehearsal tracks and things for them to be able to practice at home. But what goes on a weekly basis the rehearsal is just a very small part of it. I'm very much dependent on those musicians working and practicing at home on their own, so that when we come to rehearsals, we're not trying to teach things again that we taught the week before. So that's sort of, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Now, one of the things that makes, on the choral side of things, makes life easier for me personally as a conductor is that, remember earlier I told you that I wanted to be the next Julie Andrews, and it was my whole life was all about singing. And so I had an operatic singing career. Um, that lasted about 25, almost 30 years. And I still every once in a while sing professionally, not very often because age has taken its toll. And I just have other interests that I rather spend time. I love conducting. I love, having the opportunity to do choir and orchestra. I also teach private voice and piano at home. But my opera career required that I be very proficient in language. So I am very proficient in French, German, Italian languages. What I was going to say about Misa Azteca, the first pages that we saw of this, the first pages were in Latin, and then we went into Spanish. But there's another component of this piece which is interesting, is the actual native language called Nahuatl, which is not Spanish. It's not Spanish, and it's not Latin. It's not like a Native American language either. It's its very own thing. Sometimes people call it the Aztec language, but it's not really that either. And so I had to learn how to pronounce and read the Nahuatl, and then teach it to my choir to be able to sing in that language. So the orchestral side of things requires, really excellent music reading skills and obviously the ability to hold it all together. The choral side of things, we deal with languages. And so because I had this tremendous background in languages, doing a piece like Misa Azteca is not really daunting to me because it's just another language to add to my repertoire of languages. And so it's just one of those things that that I think is unique, to be able to pick up a language and then be able to learn the pronunciation rules, learn to read it. I don't understand all of it, but there's a lot of similarities. So, but then be able to teach it as well. So that's kind of it. Choosing repertoire. So that is in some ways some of the most time. That's my most time consuming activity, because I have to come up with these great creative themes for our concerts. And then I have to, usually that's spurred by a specific piece that I go, ooh, I want to do this piece. Let me build a whole concert around this piece and this theme. And I spend hours and hours and hours and hours searching for new music. Sometimes it's old new music, but it's new to us. And our concert season this coming year, our first concert back which is in October, is called Let Music Live. And I felt that was appropriate coming off of COVID, where we've not been able to sing together for over a year. And we're finally going to reconvene at the end of August for rehearsals for a concert in mid-October. Our December concert, I have to do a little commercial, right? Our December concert is, I'm calling an Arizona Holiday, and it's we're going to do several arrangements of traditional Christmas songs that have been arranged by composers and musicians who live here, either right in the Valley or in Arizona. So we're featuring some Arizona composers, which I think we need to always promote our own people that are doing wonderful things. And then in February, we're doing a concert Valentine's weekend, and I'm calling it It's About Love. And so that will be the whole theme of that concert will be about love. The good and the bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly. of love. And then our final concert is the first weekend in April of 22, and that's when we will do Misa Azteca, as well as some other pieces by Latin composers. So that's going to be a really fun thing. And the last thing that we're doing is we are going to participate in the Memorial Day celebrations in Washington, D.C. For Memorial Day 2022. So they have a big festival chorus of 300 singers and a huge band slash orchestra. And we will travel with about 30 of our choir people up out to Washington, D.C. for 3 days of rehearsals and then a performance at Kennedy Center, and then be a part of the Memorial Day pre-parade, pre-Memorial Day celebration concert. So we're all excited about that. So I'd love to open it up for questions, comments, anything that you guys are wanting to know. What did I leave out? Anybody?
So I just have a quick question.
Sure.
As a music lover, I find that music is relaxing, but it sounds like conducting is very. It can be like overwhelming. Just the way you were describing it, there's a lot that goes into it, and so I was wondering, even just like with jobs and stuff, you go home and you dream about it. Like, do you find yourself being so consumed sometimes that like you're thinking about it like constantly? Okay.
24/7. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
The brain just never really turns off.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing is that it's very physical.
Yes.
It is hugely, and it's aerobic exercise extraordinaire. And my Apple Watch, records all of my arm movements as steps. And so when I finish a rehearsal, I'll look down and I've done 20,000 steps in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well,
earlier before we started, I asked you, do you have to wear comfortable shoes? So that's if you want to share that too, what you were talking about.
So, I don't sit during rehearsals. I stand the entire time. We rehearse from 6 to 9. So 3 hours, 2 nights a week, I am on my feet. And I've just gotten really used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. And I don't stand still either. I'm very animated on the podium, and the choir, sometimes in choir, man, I get crazy. I'm jumping around and the one thing I will say is that I am passionate, very, very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I feel so blessed that I have been able to spend my entire adult life making a living as a musician. And that often means having 3 or 4 different jobs at the same time in order to do that. So I have often had a church music director position where I've been sometimes choir director, organist, handbell choir director, praise team director, you name it, all the entire music program, as well as teaching, about 15 to 20 hours a week of private lessons at home, and singing professionally. So for many years in the Valley, I sang professionally with a group called the Royal Renaissance Singers and another group called Opera Tunity. And both of those groups, we did a lot of school shows, a lot of music education in the schools. We would go, and the Renaissance Singers, we would go in all our regalia, our royal regalia Renaissance period, and we would educate kids and adults on the Renaissance period, a lot of the historical stuff. We would sing, obviously, Renaissance music for them, talk about what that was like, what life was like. It was just really fun. And then Opera Tunity was an opera education quartet of singers and a pianist that would make it a quintet. That again, we did a lot of school programs, we did a lot of concerts, we sang with Phoenix Symphony any number of times. And so that was happening. I sang lead roles with Arizona Opera. I sang 21 operas with Houston Grand Opera back in the mid 80s. So you can do the math. I graduated from high school in 78. So I'm old. And so anyway, but I really I had a wonderful singing career. But in the midst of that singing career, I always had other musical things going on in the downtimes, because as far as having a career in opera goes, you can only really perform successfully about 2 to 3 major roles a year, maybe 4, which meant that you weren't singing 20, you weren't singing 365 days a year. So you would go for 3 weeks of rehearsal, 2 weeks of performance, and then you would have 6 weeks off. And then you would go and do that somewhere, do something somewhere else with a different opera company. And so in the meantime, one had, you had to still put food on your table. And so I always had private students who were very understanding of my travel schedule. And the churches that I worked for were also very understanding of because they knew that was really what my life was at that point in time. So as I've gotten older, conducting has now taken the front seat where it used to take the back seat. And so now that really is my whole emphasis in life, is doing the conducting thing.
Well, Patty, I don't have a question, but I would just like to thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I mean, your passion for music clearly shines through, and your representation of how intricate and complicated a conductor's life is was so well presented. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I tell you, growing up, I wanted to be Julie Andrews too. So
Yeah, my first love was musical theater. I never intended to have a career in opera.
right.
That was never on my radar.
Yeah.
But as I studied voice and my voice developed, that's where it went.
Yeah. I kind of stayed with the musical
Yeah.
comedy, but yeah.
Anybody else? Linda looks like she wants to say something. She's
Probably
standing.
has to unmute herself.
Unmute. Do you need to unmute? You can press the space bar.
Where do you live currently, Patty? What city?
I live in Glendale.
Oh, in Glendale. Okay.
Yep. Just near the stadium.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yep. So been here well, we moved into this new home. It's not new to us home a year ago, but I've lived in Glendale since 2003 with an 8-year hiatus to Australia. So I married an Australian, and I got to live in Australia for 8 years, and then moved back in 2012, and he closed his business there, and now we live here. And and when I went to Australia, I was not thinking that I would have a music career at all, because I didn't know anything about really what was going on in Australia. And he lived in a little tiny community, well, smaller than Phoenix community, about 90,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And just, had a real country life kind of feel to it. And I thought, there won't be any music to do here, and that's fine. I'm happy to do something else and explore other interests and things. And I had told exactly one person at my church about my background, having had a professional singing career. And 4 months after I moved to Australia, she came in. We owned a computer sales and service business, my husband did, and I learned to do computers while I was in Australia. And anyway, this friend walked into our computer shop one afternoon and said, so there's some people in town that I think you should meet. And I'm like, okay. She said, so have you seen that big billboard that says opera in the Alps? And I went, yeah, we thought we might go to the performance. She said, well, these are the people who organized that event. And I just think you should go meet them. And so, so I went, okay, what harm is that going to do? So I went, she took me over to meet these people. We had a little brief conversation, and pretty soon they were saying, we'd kind of like to hear you sing. And I went, I haven't sung in like 5 months. They're like, oh, I'm sure you could sing something for us. And so I was like, okay. And so I sang an aria that I've, sung for a gazillion years. And they were like, wow. And they said, so like, how do we get a hold of you? And I mean, they were all excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was like the worst audition of my life. I wasn't warmed up. I haven't sung in 5 months. And they called me at 7 a.m. the next morning and said, so we'd like to meet you for lunch. And we're like, okay. And so we're running a business, and I turned to my husband, I'm like, so can we do this? And he's like, yeah, I think we can do that. So we went and met them for lunch. And by the time lunch was over, we do these big events. It's Australian music events. And our theme is we do beautiful music in beautiful places. We have a 100-piece choir and a 60-piece orchestra. And we want you to be the soprano soloist in our concert in February. And I just went, what? It's in Melbourne, and it's a benefit for the Royal Children's Hospital, and about 3,000 people attend. And I was just flabbergasted. So anyway, so my music career found me in Australia. And from there, I went on to do a lot of concert performances with them. But they also had a young artist program, and they asked me to be the head teacher for their young artist program. So I got to work with some really incredibly talented young, 19 and 20-year-old aspiring opera singers who are now having fabulous careers all over the world. It's so exciting to see what they're doing. And then I took on the community choir in the town where I lived, and did that for 6 seasons, I guess. Yeah. So it's just been an amazing journey to be able to do music at that level all over the world.
Wonderful. And what brought you back to Arizona?
My kids
Okay.
and my grandkids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have 4 grandbabies. Well, they're not babies anymore, but they're still babies in my heart.
Well, of course, they'll always be your babies.
Right. Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly. So anyway, well, that's pretty much all I have for you guys tonight. This was really fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Goodyear,
I'm sure a lot of
inviting
people
me.
have probably tuned in on the YouTube. They could watch on YouTube too. So I hope a lot more people tuned in.
And, and if you're up for a journey to come to one of our concerts in Sun City or Anthem, our website is pmaz.org, as in promusicaarizona.org. We, of course, would love to have you guys join us for some of our concerts. And if you know people who are looking for a musical home, who either want to sing or play, we'll be holding auditions in the beginning of